Good afternoon, everyone. As has become our custom, today's meeting will be live streamed as well as recorded. So please be on notice. If you want to be anonymous, please stay out of camera range. I'd like to call the meeting to order, observing that we have a quorum of directors. I'd like to go next to adoption of our agenda. And in connection with adopting the agenda, I would like to ask the other directors to take item C2, first things first, request for recognition, off of the consent calendar and move it to new business under item 10G. Having done that, are there other changes other directors would like to request? Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by John Feldman, seconded by S. All in favor? Thank you. Would you please be the timekeeper, John? You will be the taskmaster for us. Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda is the usual open forum for members.
Thank you, Hugh.
Sue, before you get started,
Okay.
remember we've got a new lighting system there that'll tell you when your time is up.
So I'm supposed to push the green button myself?
No, all controlled up here. Thank you.
Okay, 373 Greenfield Circle. I don't see Richard Duncan in the audience. There you are, Richard. I'm going to have a very short poem. You called me a fifth columnist. Now you know that's just ludicrous. Who bothers to do some spying on a group that won't stop crying? We've heard your mewling loud and clear. Now it's our time to stand up here.
Nice to have another poet in the house. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Arthur Boot at 6394 Meadow Ridge Drive. I want to talk a little about a forensic report by Axis Construction Consultants. In 2012, the OVA board contracted Axis at considerable expense to investigate the maintenance and condition of OVA's recreation facilities. On behalf of First Things First, I have summarized for the board and all Oakmont residents here attending or reviewing these proceedings the following costs attributed to the rectifying readily identifiable and obvious deficiencies. The dollars reflect an indication of the severity of defects in our facilities that needs to be addressed for safety purposes, reasons alone, if nothing else. Asbestos, unsafe electrical controls, parking lot lighting, bringing buildings up to code, including seismic, to name but a few. And these are the numbers that Axis came up with. The Burger Center was 508,454. The East Rec, 155,000. The West Rec, 711,100. Central Electrical, 306,400. Central Cabana, 284,000, for a total of $1,964,954. Most of these figures are for construction only and do not include materials which could be as much as a 50% addition. Question: where are we in addressing these problems, and how can an office building take precedence over them? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your summary, Art.
Good afternoon. I'm Virginia Katz on Oakmont Drive. We have debated on and on about this proposed office building for many, many months. And during that time that we have been debating that office building, I have to say, did we take leave of our senses? Just look at the ground here at Burger. The Burger Center, the home to the OVA meetings, the dance club, Boomers, Shaboom, events, crab feeds, New Year Eve parties, movings at Oakmont, and this is also a worship center for the community church. And we are allowing a duct tape floor for months and months and months. Just look down. You'll see all the duct tape. It's all around you. So here we are now debating a $1.5 million plus project, while we are also saying that as residents, we will allow our facilities to be duct taped together and then used by our residents. And instead of talking to the board about getting these things done, we're debating a new building. A new building when we're duct taping our floors. And what's underneath this duct tape? Asbestos. And yet, here we are again debating the merits of a new building while we're on a floor that's duct taped. So maybe we can just go duct tape the deck to the East Side Rec. Duct tape the locker rooms. Duct tape everything. Seems to be that the residents think that this is an okay situation to be in. Duct taping. So may I please ask, instead of discussing the building, we discuss what we need to do to get this facility that has thousands and thousands of hits every year fixed, where we're not tripping on duct tape. We're not going to crab feeds and looking down at duct tape. We're not having an OVA meeting looking at duct tape. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Anderson. I live at 7355 Oakmont Drive. I'm not trying to be anonymous today. I'm wearing my cap to cover up bandages on top of my head. Due to a prior engagement, I did not attend the February 10 meeting where the latest presentation was made about the proposed central office building. However, I did spend more than an hour in front of my computer watching and listening to the excellent video of that meeting produced by Oakmont Video Productions. And I was very impressed by the entire presentation and the people making it. I believe that an excellent case was made for proceeding with a long-term quest for an OVA-owned mixed-use office building that reflects the character of our community. I like the modified design. I like the central location. I really like the fact that we seem to be able to afford it while at the same time we can continue with needed repairs and upgrades to the East and West Recreation Centers, as well as Burger. Thanks to the prudent long-term financial management of our association, we are in a position to take advantage of the Hunter Group offer to build the building at a significant discount while we pay for all the improvements underway on our existing buildings. Compared to some in the audience, I'm a short timer here in Oakmont. I've lived here just shy of 14 years. But have experienced 3 different OVA office locations, none of which were fully adequate to the needs or an attractive and welcoming representation of our extraordinary community. As I see it, it is a logical and practical decision to go forward with a central office project that combines a much desired and improved office environment in a central location with additional needed meeting rooms for community use, plus answering the need for a new central pool cabana and switchgear replacement. I understand that some members of our community feel that they have more accurate information about the financial costs of the new buildings and repair costs of the work being done and to be done on other association buildings, more so than the OVA Ad Hoc Committee, the Finance Committee, the Treasurer, the Board, and the Manager. I respect the diligence of these community members and feel that they should present their detailed cost analysis and and let it be openly compared to the OVA cost information. When that is done, I encourage the board to proceed with construction of the new central office complex as soon as possible.
Thank you, Bill.
Good afternoon, Noel Lyons, Hillsdale Drive. And I'd like to begin by thanking our board for all the time and effort expended on our behalf. We do appreciate your work. Bill, I've only been here 11 years, but in that time that I've been here, like most of you, I've been involved in many discussions about policies, facilities, and people. And when I was on the board, people came to me with ideas, suggestions, and yes, complaints about OVA matters. Almost without exception, though, it seems that folks were remarkably patient and understanding with staff and the board. Maybe it's because we've all had enough life experience with remodeling projects, bureaucracies, and so forth, to know that things don't happen overnight, and competing priorities must always be accommodated. So I've wondered, what's different this time? And that's what I'd like to comment to. When it looked to folks like the board was working on what needed to be done, if it was taking longer than we wanted, or if we didn't agree with priorities, we cut the board some slack. Normally, we'd see repairs like we'd see things like repairs to showers at the east, paving at the west, or rebuilding the plaza here at the Burger. And we'd hold our tongue about things like West Rec lockers, the embarrassing deck at East, the duct tape on the floor in the Burger here, and so forth. The difference now is that while these items are being addressed, other big items seem to be taking backseat to a 1.3 million or more office building that residents neither need nor want. And I would add here that I recently looked over at what Spring Lake has done with a building that was very much like the Burger Review. Almost the same age, but inside it had a lot of similarities. They ended up realizing that they had to level it and build something new in order to provide the right kind of facilities to their residents. We're going to face that one day. But meanwhile, I think the community was feeling that we're seeing a turning away from OVA's primary reason of being, to provide athletic, recreational, and club facilities, and that has cost goodwill and tolerance in the community, and I find this sad. I hope the board will redirect its energy, and I suggest that First Things First can help. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pat Amadeo, Oakleaf Drive. Oakmont has well over 100 organizations, each focusing on their special interests. It's one of the things that is so delightful for us. There is only one entity, however, that represents the public interest. It's you, our board of directors. You were elected to balance our needs, our interests, and our finances. In recent years, residents have become frustrated because it appears little had been done to maintain our facilities. Afraid to make decisions, study after study was initiated, resulting in little, if no action. Hundreds of volunteer hours were wasted. Worst case analysis mentalities led to virtual paralysis. Our facilities have suffered. You have begun to reverse that trend, working on the east lockers, the west, the parking lot, the median, the bocce ball courts, and directly visible to all to see the plaza. Keep it up. Don't fall prey to the naysayers who think you cannot do more than one thing at a time. That's poppycock. Please move ahead on the new building. Years of planning and hundreds of volunteer hours will be wasted if you don't. Leadership means leading, not delegating the decisions to others.
Thank you, Pat.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, board, for all the dedication and my name is Sue Correll, and I live on Oakleaf. I also have a business here. I'm a broker owner of a property management company called Sue Correll and Associates. I opened the office last February 1st. I want to thank the board also for volunteering time and many hours of meetings. I used to be the president of the board over Vista Del Lago and down in Bennett Valley. I did that for 4 years, and I also was instrumental in changing their CCNRs and bringing them up to date at that time. I also ran for city council in 1998. That was something. A few weeks ago, I attended a meeting of First Things First, where I first learned about the concerns that this group has about the decision of this board relative to this building. And after doing some research myself, I'd like you to consider the following reasons why I think it would be prudent for the board to delay this construction. And these are my 6 reasons, just like David Letterman can't state. When 4,500 residents don't have the right to vote on a project of this size, it puts the board of directors at a huge risk. Considering the fact that the CCNRs have not been updated since Oakmont was developed 50 years ago, it's time for the board to do it. Not doing this puts the community at great risk of litigation and liability. This should be done before depleting the capital improvement fund to erect an office building that many in the community do not feel is the appropriate use of their money. 2, there is an extensive amount of deferred maintenance that the board has not completed. To my knowledge, there's no detailed financial plan for completing this work, to the extent that you know exactly how much of the asset replacement fund and capital improvement fund will be spent, and hence the name of the group, First Things First. 3, there's not enough documentation from the board to prove, to me anyway, beyond a shadow of a doubt that building this office building is cost effective when measured against other alternatives. 4, the case has not been made by the board that building an office building is in the best interest of the majority of the residents here, and that it conforms to the board of directors' articles of incorporation that require that you are to address recreational and activity centers of the residents, which does not include making luxurious office space for 6 employees. 5, the case has not been made that existing buildings cannot accommodate the needs of the community. And number 6, the last one.
I'm sorry, your time has expired. I realize you had your
I
life.
have one more. Can I get one more?
No, your time has expired. Thank you. Appreciate what you have to say.
All right.
Thanks, Mary.
Can you hear me? All right, mine will be short because public speaking is not my strong suit. Normally I would be found sitting in the audience and applauding the words of people like Pat Amadeo and Bill Anderson to show my support. I was reminded the other day that if those of us who are a little bashful about getting up in front of people and talking always sit back and don't speak, it may be assumed that tacitly we go along with one side or the other, maybe the side that doesn't want the building or whatever the current issue is. So I just wanted to stand today, add my voice to the people who believe that the new proposed office building is a good thing. It will be a great thing for Oakmont. It will improve all of our property values, will beautify this space immensely. I know, that's just an opinion. But and this opportunity is a good one. The opportunity to do it right now is a good one, and that we should take advantage of it. I attended the meeting the other night, and although I was in favor of it already, I learned many things that I didn't even know, and my husband is on the committee that researched this. So I'm even more in favor of it now, and I would like to also say a word for our hardworking office staff, who I think may be feeling a little bit maligned by some of the comments that are made. People who say that all of our money should be spent on recreational and fun opportunities for residents, and that 6 employees do not deserve a space of their own to work in, a nice space that they enjoy coming to and that they can feel happy in. I disagree with that. I think they do deserve that building. Doesn't matter how many employees we have, there will be meeting space, which will be utilized by many, many people in the community. It will be a beautiful addition to the Central Complex. And I want to say thank you to our employees for putting up with all the moves that they've had to endure over the years and the bad, cramped, icky spaces they had to work in. I think they deserve better than that.
Thank you, Nancy.
My name is Donna Hopley. I live on Mesa Oaks Place. And this afternoon, I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to use the KISS approach, which I think we all understand what that is. And I'll revise it a little bit. It's going to be keep it simple, sweetie. This morning, I got on the internet and downloaded costs per square foot of construction for office buildings. Now, this should give us a benchmark of what we should be paying if we need to build this building, which I disagree with. In New York City, the cost per square foot is $230.79. San Francisco, $213.06. Washington, D.C., the cost is $171.07. And in two major cities in Texas, average is $150. Now I'm going to ask John Taylor, do you know, given the cost of $1.13 million, what the cost per square foot is of the building you are proposing?
The presentation that the architects gave us for construction costs was $250 per square foot on an estimated basis.
Well, unfortunately, that's incorrect. On a cost of $1.13 million, the cost per square foot is $376. That's not counting overruns. So you're asking your board, our hardworking board, and I agree with what's been said earlier, you put in a lot of time and a lot of hard work, to approve something that's going to cost over $300, almost $400 a square foot. That is not good business. So I thank you for listening, and I hope you consider what I've said. Thank you.
I'm Bob Giddings, J.C. Lane. For the past year or more, there has been an enormous amount of work done by our excellent volunteers, the OVA Board, you, Hal, and Chuck Chenault, in addition to members of our professional staff regarding the proposed CBC. Their work was augmented by a number of volunteers from OVA committees. This dogged and lengthy work had perhaps its penultimate culmination at the community meeting that occurred here less than 2 weeks ago. At that meeting, a number of OVA residents' minds were changed. They felt that that meeting answered many questions and concerns they or their neighbors had regarding the proposed central business and multipurpose center between Berger and the CAC. One resident wrote, this volunteer work, quote, culminated in an excellent and comprehensive presentation. He also wrote, quote, there has been a thorough planning process and the resulting structure presented at the January 10th meeting is extremely attractive and complete. The same thoughtful resident then offered 2 areas the board may wish to consider while going forward with this project. These were thoughtful comments by an OVA resident. There were also residents with honest and constructive questions and criticisms. I believe the OVA president, the OVA manager, and our architect made every effort to answer those residents with the best information that was available at the time of the meeting. These interactions I view as positive and helpful to the OVA board and to the residents at that meeting. Of course, there were other commentators at the meeting with negative or accusatory comments that revealed them to be neither knowledgeable about the proposed building project, its lengthy and still incomplete planning process, or for that matter, the OVA Articles of Incorporation and bylaws. This, I guess, was to be expected as the same red tide occurred when opposition to the building of the CAC with its fitness center, library, computer learning center, art shop, card rooms, and meeting rooms was being planned and proposed over 7 years ago. As of today, the perfect storm has developed. No, it is not a polar vortex or a hurricane or actually anything harmful whatsoever. Rather, it is a storm of riches, of opportunity, of progress. These colliding favorable fronts include a willing builder contractor, more than sufficient OVA funds for both capital improvement and upgrades for existing facilities, a central site that is already owned by the OVA with the necessary infrastructure elements readily available. Significant cost reduction.
Red light is on. No, it is not. It is. Orange. It's orange.
Please, orange. I'm going to stop and let him catch up. There's probably an error in my equipment. We can talk about that after the meeting if you wish. I don't wish to interfere.
Well, I think if there's an error there, there may have been an error
Please
when you
continue.
cut off the other woman. Because of the light color when you cut her off.
Bob, thank you for your comments, but I think in light of the fact that we're going by the system, we should stop it at this point. Appreciate your comments, and the board has copies of your written.
Good afternoon. I'm Greg Goodwin, Old Oak Lane. And it sort of saddens me to see conflict here between neighbors. It's divisiveness, and I think it's uncalled for. Everyone has a right to express their opinion, and we need to be civil, not use words like naysayers or poppycock. I'd like to respond to some comments spoken and written by proponents of the CBC project. Quite frankly, and in my opinion, some of them don't make sense, are not well thought out. Again, as I've stated in the past, my points of view are not intended nor should be mistaken as personal attacks. John, I've got some good words for you. In a recent article, John Taylor was commended for his hard work in bringing about the success of the CBC building, and I thank him for his dedication and his contributions. However, the CAC is a facility that current residents and prospective Oakmont property owners and renters can use for their recreational, athletic, and social activities as per the bylaws of the OVA state as being the primary responsibility of the board to provide and maintain. I believe this time, John and others, working hard to construct an administrative building is quite a stretch from the bylaw's intent. The second article compared Oakmont to neighboring towns and cities, having their own building used for administrative offices and meeting rooms. I would point out that Oakmont is a homeowners association and not a municipality. If comparisons are made, we can look at other 55 and up homeowner associations, as did the Long Range Planning Commission, looking at Rossmore, Sun City, the Dominion, none of which show a separate plus or minus $1.5 million sole freestanding office building. The last point I'd like to address is a posting that surveys indicate that on an average 70 residents a day go into the office for service, and that both conference rooms are heavily used. When asked to see the survey, the response was, and I quote, "not possible, as it was information given to me after a ballpark request to the office staff," unquote. Important information needs to be accurate, shared, and reviewed. I would propose a 6-week work assessment survey be initiated and determine the true needs of the office space and
Great.
staff
Time's
duties.
up.
Thank you very much.
I'm Judy Burness. I live on Hood Mountain Circle. Are the lights off?
Yes.
Okay.
We've got a timer up here. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I'm glad that the speaker before me acknowledged the fact that the office does not serve 6 staff members, that serves an entire community of people. I've lived here for just over 20 years, and in that time, it has seemed to me that the office was constantly being moved to more and more inaccessible and inconvenient places. And I've often wondered what was the total time wasted by Oakmont residents who wanted to go to the OVA office, but it was never on your way to something else or close to something else you were doing. You had to make a special trip and probably park in a special place, take your bicycle or whatever. So I was really pleased when this beautiful proposal came up for an office building, which will also have meeting rooms to accommodate the growing number of organizations that our growing population is going to need to fulfill their interests over the coming years. I think that the impact fees from this last construction project apparently will be the last major infusion of impact fees into this community. I believe that the office building is really important, that it's an utter waste of money to be pouring funds into rent month after month and year after year, and that the office must be centrally located in order to serve its purpose. The other needs, the continuing upgrading and maintenance of our existing facilities, can certainly be handled as they are in other communities by our capital improvement funds and annual set-asides to do that within our existing budgets. So that's it, and I too, like Nancy, felt the need to get up and say what I thought after hearing so much that I disagreed with. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your feelings.
My name is Peggy. My name is Peggy Dombeck. I live on Woodley Way. Peggy Dombeck on Woodley Way. I have a question for the board. I read that the board, in lieu of, because of the fact that so many people are opposed to this building, that the board would look into some of the other options that have been suggested. And I would like to know what you've done about that. What have you looked into?
There are some items toward the end of the agenda today that will help answer that question.
Is there anything you can tell me now?
Well, the item on the agenda has to look into the possibility of the beauty parlor property, since we learned last week, or 10 days ago, that the Berger Foundation is willing to discuss the sale of it.
Okay. Anything
And there's
else?
also a proposal to discuss on the board agenda, changing our approach to managing the contract with the Hunter Group. So there are several steps in the process.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Does it go? Is it at my level now? Yeah. All right, my name is Ellen Mopson, and I live at 8905. Oh, all right. This one. Am I
Really close, like an ice cream cone.
very close. How am I going to read? Okay. At any rate, 8905 Acorn Lane. And I'm one of those people who's been talked about as being mean-spirited. I think you need to understand that the group that we are part of really is angry. And why are we angry? We're angry because we have a long list of repairs to the buildings we presently own. Yet we get plan after plan for a new office building and a plan for new West locker room structure that disappeared as quickly as it was on the table. We have been told that during the one-sided presentations that we were going to save $80,000 with Hunter's offer. Okay, so where does this come from? If there are no outside bidders, how do we know what $540,000 will buy and what will be added gratis by Hunter? I've never had anybody in construction give me anything for free. You are lucky if you get what you have asked for. Bob Giddings is asking us to support the board. Well, I have problems with that. We got a slick, well thought out PowerPoint presentation from Archaeologics, and at what cost to us? Let's restripe the Burger parking lot to meet city guidelines with the new office building. Our board thought they could do this without permits to keep us in the dark and avoid improving the lighting situation. A string of burglaries prompted installing surveillance cameras on Pythian. A warning sign was erected, but the camera was never installed because there's no electricity there. Were residents informed? I even wonder if the camera at the main entrance is in operation. The new sign at Pythian entrance cannot be seen when approaching, from Sonoma and is barely visible from the other direction. At night, you cannot read the sign at all. Why is it okay to spend thousands of dollars on something totally ineffective? It does not make sense to me to support a board that wants to spend our last large sum of money on a beautiful building before attending to necessary repairs. All of these things that have been done, the sign, whatever, all have been spent large sums of money before taking care of what we need. I'm proud to be part of the mean-spirited group. Why put frosting on a cake that is crumbling?
Alan Scott, Woodley Way. I again would emphasize that it is a bad idea to lose more than 40% of the open space, or at least up to 40% of the open space in front of the central facilities. To make that a parkland would enhance substantially the values of property here. To make this burger center very much of a statement, a contemporary statement, would furthermore enhance the values of property. Putting an office building, a pedestrian office building, there will not.
Thank you, Alan.
Hi, I'm Ron Levy, Oakmont Drive. I've been trying to understand something. Is this a 3,000 square foot building?
It depends on whether or not you're talking about the inclusion of space for electric switchgear, the pool and spa equipment, and the replacement of the cabana. It's my understanding from the latest drawing that the actual square footage of the building that would house offices and meeting rooms is approximately 3,100 square feet. But there is additional square footage associated with those other parts of the construction.
You gave a very informative presentation last time, illustrating the different possibilities for different locations, why you rejected it, and I believe in that particular presentation, you were showing the cost of rebuilding new, from scratch, buildings. And I believe the cost of that was somewhere around $250 a square foot. Was that accurate, how you estimated, and you were totaling the cost for new locations, what they would be?
We were trying to report what the committees had gathered in their work with the architects, and there were three numbers that we tried to be consistent about. One was $250 per square foot for the brick and mortar construction costs of a new building. $150 a square foot for remodeling a building that has to have its total infrastructure rebuilt along with new flooring and partitions and things like that.
Oh, that's rebuilding as opposed to remodeling.
And then remodeling, the figure we got from the architects was $70 a square foot. So we tried to use those figures through all of the presentation material.
What is the estimated cost of this new building that we're building, that you're proposing building?
We don't know what it is. There are way too many things still to be looked into, but I do believe that the comments at the meeting itself indicated that it could run as much as $1.5 million.
Okay, so we're looking at, all right, well, I'm a little surprised at this point when you're talking about construction that you don't have all of the other things you just mentioned here pinned down. Because I was taking the 3,000 square feet building, you said 31, and dividing that into $1.3 million or $1.1 million, we're looking at $430 a square foot. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a mathematician, but it's a whole lot more than $250 a square foot. So I don't understand why this little building, which is close to plumbing and other facilities, would be that much more per square foot than what you were projecting out here, for instance, if you tore down one of these other buildings.
Let me try and help clarify that, because we've tried to follow what the committee have brought to our attention. There's a major difference between the brick and mortar construction costs and what the total cost of a building is. The architects have always made clear, and it was true as far as the Central Activities Center is concerned, that there are what they're called soft costs beyond the brick and mortar construction costs.
Which are what?
Those soft costs include the architect's design fees, permit fees, engineers' fees, finishing fees as far as the interior of the building are concerned, and the level of decor that you choose to put in the building. So as an example, the initial figure for the Central Activities Center was $250 a square foot. The finished cost of the Central Activities Center was over $350 a square foot.
This little building is over $430. According to what you've just given us now, which you say is not complete.
I accept your numbers. All I'm saying it is incomplete, so I have no basis to debate your numbers.
So, but you're ready to go ahead with this without having complete figures.
The open forum is not a place for debate. This board has not voted to go ahead with any building. The board that you're addressing didn't even authorize the design of the building. It was done in February of last year. It was done before this present board was elected. This board has not approved the expenditure of anything different except the minimal costs associated with an effort to respond to residents' complaints when the first drawings were shown, and that was called detailed design to come up with the alternatives that the architect talked about. But we have not authorized construction drawings. We have not authorized submission to the city for a design review permit. There are many, many steps still to be addressed.
Oh, okay, thank you. That clarifies a lot, because I thought at this point you had a pretty good idea of what this thing was going to cost. So when we saw it, we could say, oh, okay, that makes sense, or it doesn't make sense. Thank you.
My name's Lisa Berman, and I live on Oak Trail Place. 4 months ago today, I had a one-way plane ticket to bring me from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to SFO, and ultimately to my new home here in Oakmont. And I have to say I'm very happy to live here. I moved here for the lifestyle, and it has more than met my expectations. So I'm very happy to be here. I also expect to live here for a long time, and want to be part of positive changes for the future. I'd like to go back, instead of talking about dollars and cents, about things that are kind of apples and oranges, because we're talking about not just a building, but we're talking about also electrical substation, we're talking about cabanas, we're talking about a lot of stuff. What I'd like to do is go back up to the 10,000 foot level and address something that I think all of us are interested in, and that's our long-term property value. Having come here from a faraway place and having had to go to the office on several occasions, I felt that office did not represent what Oakmont is about. It is the first impression any potential buyer gets of Oakmont, unless you happen to have a friend who lives here. It is not a good impression. It makes us look low rent, unsophisticated, And the new building as proposed shows the quality of Oakmont. It's a first impression, I think, that needs to be made to anybody and everybody who wants to ultimately consider living here. The other factor I would like to discuss is just the mere fact of convenience. I think that's also important to all of us, so that when we do our business with the Oakmont staff, it needs to be much more convenient and easily accessible. I don't even know how that staff does its work with 70 people on average showing up every day. Just everybody has to get up, there's a lot of interruptions, there's not a lot of private space. I would like to see that whole thing streamlined and made more convenient, which when I saw the presentation by the architect, it was clear that we'd have a much better way of doing business with the Oakmont office. So I think from the point of view of our happiness in living here and the first impression we make with visitors and guests and potential buyers, this is an excellent project, and I think this and many other things need to go forward as we build for the future and new residents here at Oakmont. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Altman. I live on Oak Shadow Drive. In speaking in reference to the former presenter, I too agree that the office staff deserves a place to work. Somehow I can't personally understand how if we change the office around, it should still cost us over $1 million to do that. I think there's a lot of alternatives to make it more productive and easier for them to work in that office without spending an exorbitant amount of money. And the prospect of constructing a new building for administrative purposes concerns me greatly for a number of reasons. I consider myself a pretty active member of the community, and I'm pretty tuned into the governance of the association. And within the past couple of years, I've yet to see or hear any type of needs analysis done or financial comparisons performed on alternatives for housing our management and admin staff. This seems out of line with what's happening recently with the current facilities and their need for improvement and repair. In those cases, we've spent months and years debating how to go about the fixes, and today we even state worries about uncovering more issues as we delve into the repairs, which are understandable. Why, when it comes to this new office building, all of a sudden do we have exactly what we need in the design, not even seeming to hiccup when it comes to what's needed, since we have it done, a needs analysis? The plans and renderings we saw on January 10th show a very attractive building. Where do we, as members, benefit from this building? Will the new building save us many dollars over the next 10 to 20 years? Will the new building provide a workspace that ultimately reduces payroll and benefits, which is our single largest expense by far in this association? Does it provide us with new technologies or processes that we can use? Or will members see a marked increase in services and benefits because of the construction of this new building? On the financial side, what does our future look like? Were we to use these same capital improvement funds, including the impact fees, received and those still due, and using them to fix the East and West rec centers, now that we absolutely know that we can use these funds on the East and West rec center? At the suggestion of an officer of the board a couple months ago, who posted something on a social media page, I did draft a financial comparison between a build and a lease option, and I have delivered it to the association very recently. The numbers I used are based on what's been stated publicly, and my draft shows leasing to be an option that would cost far less than the building, a new building, possibly a 2-to-1 difference. I encourage you as the board to do the same and hopefully present that to us and use accurate information, because my numbers were estimates, and provide this to all of us to see and discuss. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Wally Shelp, Bellhaven Court. I'm about halfway through my 20th year here in Oakmont, and I've probably spent 15 of them serving on God knows how many committees, board for a short period of time. And I want to comment on just two things. One, I have not heard a single argument against the CAC that holds any water, to my mind, none. With that said, what I want to tell you is, I hear people saying, why don't we have a vote of the community? Do you realize how many people live here and how many people would vote? Very few. We don't get people to vote in this community. Therefore, we have an elected board. You elect these people. You elect them by reading their resumes. What have they done in their past life? How will they affect our board? Are they smart enough to handle a job here? In my 20 years here, I have found that probably every board has had a majority of intelligent people on it. I've seen a lot of unintelligent people on boards here in the past. But fortunately, nothing much was happening in Oakmont. I see no reason why the board that we are looking at today can't pat their head and rub their stomach at the same time. Some of you people seem to think they can't. Our past problems were due to professional management who refused to move things along or was incapable of moving things along. This is not the case now. We have a board that knows what the hell they're doing. You elected them, they represent you. You don't get to vote on each project that comes along as an up and down vote, because we would never get anything done in Oakmont if that were the case. And if you think that's wrong, just start reading on this subject. We are too big, too big. We are not a 50-unit outfit where, yes, all 50 people can get together and decide what to do. We cannot do that. We are too big. The board has to do it. You have to have confidence in your board, and you have to vote for a board. And only 32% of our eligible voters vote in any election in the 20 years I've been here. About typical in the United States. You all vote when it comes to a national election. We run 92% in Oakmont, but we can't get you to vote any other time.
Time's up, Wally.
Thank you.
I noticed that my name is Richard Duncan, Hood Mountain Way. I noticed Wally mentioned that there's been universal support for the CAC, and you can't understand why there's so much objection to the CBC. I might point out there's a big difference in the two buildings. One is devoted to recreation and social activities, the other is an office. I hadn't planned today to present a poem, though I did come prepared. But in view of Susan Millar's talent here, I'll have to break it out. First things first has the charter to review and prevent a waste of our dollars or misguided intent. For example, this office is our last open space. It's a white elephant that will add to our taxable base. We have no idea what construction will cost, what subcontracts are let, how much will be lost. Do you think Hunter's subs will work for no profit, and audit will find that they're picking our pocket? And so we are here to ask you again, reconsider your actions as we try to explain. You may think us a nuisance, just here to complain, but we think we deserve more than just your disdain. Let's look at this building and what it portends. I can assure you right now, it will bring you no friends. Our need is to have our facilities fixed, upgraded, refurbished before they're deep sixed. And you should be warned that if you persist in building a monument that gets us all pissed, I suspect you will end up the ones feeling sorry, because it will always be known as Oakmont Straight Folly.
Harriet Paul, 6347 Meadow Ridge Drive. I'm here to apologize for my outburst, and especially to Bob Giddings. I'm really sincerely sorry. I am just so frustrated that I lost control. What else can I say? And my greatest source of frustration is what you are asking us to accept. We have no idea what the building is going to cost, but never mind, we can afford it.
Don, can we make yours the last one? We've got some business to get into.
And as far as I'm concerned, Don Green, Oak Trail Circle.
I was part of the committee that did the CAC for you, and I think we did a good job. We brought the project in on time and on budget. One of the major features of that was to give Oakmont its first modern, state-of-the-art meeting room. We call it Room B, I believe. So essentially the same team did the planning for the CBC, and my function of that on that committee was to collect all the written comments of all the Oakmont residents that had comments, suggestions, complaints about this project. We got well over 200 written complaints. At the same time, the fitness club was circulating a petition, and they got another couple hundred residents, fit club residents, who generally opposed the project. So we got a number of over 400 inputs on this project. We recognized the complaints of the fitness club, and so we redesigned the building. We moved it 20 feet over, a little further away from the fitness center. We reconfigured and downsized the building. We restructured the building to give us 2 more modern, up-to-date meeting rooms, which seemed to be overlooked in the comments regarding this project. Now we hear all the complaints about this building. And some of the major opponents of this building come from the fitness club. And they're very vocal. They raise some very strong objections to it. But they do not address how we're going to provide meeting rooms for all these new clubs that the board keeps approving. We thought the CBC would help address those issues. Now we're hearing that our fitness club feels it needs to expand, and they want to take over our new modern meeting room B for an expansion of the fitness club. It seems a little disingenuous for us to have the fitness club and its supporters object to the CBC and at the same time want to eliminate the only modern, up-to-date meeting room that we have here in Oakmont. I think that's a little hypocritical from their part, but that's only my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we've got to finish this open forum, thank you, and move on to the business of the meeting. When the meeting comes to an end, for those of you who want to make more statements, we'll come back to that opportunity. Thank you for that cooperation. I have some announcements for you. First of all, the Board of Supervisors will have a hearing on February the 4th regarding the application of the Meadows Kennel to expand their operation, which has been challenged by opponents. If you are interested in expressing a view about that, the meeting will be at 2:10 p.m. on February the 4th in room 102A at the Sonoma County Administration Building, which is at 575 Administration Drive in Santa Rosa. I'm not familiar with the details. I'm only sharing with you the fact that there's a public notice of a hearing. I think you'll be pleased if you look at the bocce courts to see that that work is almost completed. And it not only gives us new bocce courts, but some tremendous landscaping. I was really pleased myself when I had a chance to look at it. John, do you have a comment about the East Rec locker room situation?
Yeah,
Your
the East-
microphone is right.
The East Rec locker rooms are open for use. There are a few minor things that have to be completed. There's the problem possibly of one of the drains. We want to clean up the floor a little bit better. A couple lights are burned out. The doors, the external doors, are a long lead item, and they should be in within a couple of weeks, but it doesn't stop us from from using it. Overall, I think it looks terrific, and I want to thank everybody for their patience during this trying period, and realize that you had to go out of your way to move to other facilities. But it is finished, and it looks great, and it was right on budget. Thank you.
For those that want to go back and double check on the information that was provided at the January 10th community meeting, the PowerPoint images and the various speakers' remarks are available on the OVA website. There is also a paper copy in a 3-ring binder in the office of the PowerPoint images and the various remarks of the speaker and the handouts that were provided in connection with the meeting. 4 of the visual simulations that the architects showed us have now been put in the form of easel boards that look like this, and they will be put up in the CAC for those of you who want to take an up-close and detailed look at that material. Mr. Secretary, do you have a summary of the executive?
The board met in executive session on December 15th in special session, and everyone was present on the board. Louder? Okay. Everyone was present including Association Manager Cassie Turner, myself, Treasurer Chenault, and for the first part, President Pat Amadeo. The first part of the meeting involved a presentation by John Taylor, Cassie Turner, and Pat Amadeo regarding their December 18th meeting with representatives of Redwood Equities Investments, otherwise known as the Hunter Group. And the report has been issued publicly on that, so I won't go into repeating any of that. The second item on the agenda was that President Taylor reported on an article he arranged to have published in the Oakmont News summarizing the Hunter Group's flexibility regarding the OVA's construction option. And the board also did some planning regarding the January 10th, 2014 meeting adjourned at 11:20 a.m.
Thank you. There were no actions taken outside the board meeting, so the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. I have a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar. Moved by Evelyn George, seconded by Herm Hess. All in favor? Motion passes. Next, Chuck, may we have the treasurer's report and any extra comments that you have, please?
For the month of December, we had revenue of $215,000 with expenses of $177,000, leaving us a surplus for the month of $38,000. On a year-to-date basis, revenue of $2,061,000, which was 8% better than budget, and expenses of $1,907,000, which was 0.2% worse than budget, leaving us a surplus of $154,000. And of course, that's subject to audit adjustments before the year is completely final. The contributions to the various funds were all equal to or better than budget, with, for the year, funds from the impact fees from the developer, $575,000 for 39 new homes in the orchard, and there's 12 homes left to sell at this point. Cash in the various funds, operating $582,000, asset replacement $1,390,000, capital improvement $1,315,000, catastrophe $101,000, with total cash of $3,287,000. Also, it's a requirement to review the status of the asset reserve fund at least quarterly and report to the residents. For 2013, the monthly transfers were to be $33,786 per month. We have transferred that exact amount each month for the entire year. The monthly transfer for 2014 will increase to $42,667. It's also a requirement to review the bank reconciliations quarterly. I have reviewed these and verified the amounts of the balance sheet and the bank statements. Also quarterly, I'm to report our cash position for all funds in total. In January, we renewed 2 CDs with Mutual of Omaha, one for $300,000 for 3 months and one for $200,000 for 6 months. All funds are fully FDIC insured. We had CDs with interest rates ranging from 12 to 83 basis points and savings accounts ranging from 10 to 20 basis points and several non-interest bearing checking accounts.
I have a motion to accept the treasurer's monthly report and quarterly reserve analysis. Herman moves, and Frandy is second. Thank you. We have next the manager's report. Do members of the board have any questions regarding the manager's remarks?
Your mic is off.
Am I back on?
No.
Maybe this will work. Thank you. I don't know what happened to the other one, but see where I was. The manager's report. Any questions of the manager's report?
I have a question, if I could. In regard to the modifications and repairs going on at the Burger Center now, which we are taking care of. What about I've forgotten what happened to the understage area. What's
I think the manager can answer that best. Am I back on this here, Mike? I believe that they are assembling the data to recommend to us the understage strengthening and the understage fire protection, along with the flooring in this room, along with the glass, because we want to try and take care of that before there is an increased requirement for triple pane glass as opposed to double pane. And finally, the insulation in the upper regions of the building. And in connection with the installation, I believe they're also working on taking care of some strapping that's required at some of the upper joints.
No, it's just, the only reason I ask is in her summary of those things, the understage was not, just happened to be mentioned, and I was just wondering whether it was going to be included or not. That's all.
It's can you hear me? No, it's free.
Okay. No. It's part of the overall picture of the West Rec Center, but I'm sorry, the Burger Center, shame on me. Anyway, it's part of the overall picture, but what we're focusing on right now is the flooring. And by the way, we're getting a lot of kickback from residents who don't think the floor should be replaced, just so you know. However, we're looking into it because we'd like to try and maybe resurface the floor, but we're hearing that the floor is just too thin to be refurbished, so we're getting different opinions on that. We will be working on the stage and the other items, but we think for the beginning stage is different people do different parts of the project. So the people who are going to be doing the reflooring wouldn't be the people when we're rehiring for the stage. So we're looking at the overall picture, but we're taking things that we think needed the most, the fastest, let's put it that way.
I think, Cassie, one of the messages that the board would like to leave with you is that we continue to be conscious of the forensic report. And in January of last year, the board had a meeting and they identified some safety items that they would like to see at the top of the list. And that did include the understage fire protection and the understage strengthening. That's not discounting the need for safety as far as the floor is concerned. That just didn't happen to be one of the items in the forensic report. The windows items, the insulation items are all important things to do, but at the January meeting of the board, and Jim can talk about this more effectively than I can, those were certainly cost-saving improvements that could take place in the building, but they weren't on the list of safety considerations. So think our council would be, please consider that in your proposals.
Absolutely will. One of the reasons we're looking at the windows right now is because Weir Anderson advised us that in June or July, the county is now going to require triple pane glass instead of double pane glass. So that's why we're hot on this right now to get this glass replaced, because it's just going to be exponentially more expensive if we have to do that. But yes, we'll proceed with the fire protection.
Thank you.
John, I have a question. Recently, I saw some report that talked about replacing the windows in the Burger Center with a three-panel, three-position windows as opposed to two. Do you know if there's an error in this?
Well, that's what Cassie was just commenting on, Herm. You just may not have picked it up. Right now, the code would require us to replace the windows with double pane. There will be a code improvement or a code expansion the middle of this year that wouldn't let us put in double pane. It would require us to put in triple pane. And there's some question about the benefit in this environment of waiting until we had to spend the extra money associated with triple pane.
Thank you.
Do you have any update on what happened as far as the Goodwill trailer is concerned? I think people in the community are calling me on the telephone and sending me email messages.
They have not as yet found a revised location.
Kathleen, I see you standing.
I heard they were at Oliver's Market, but I haven't seen it there, but that's the last that I heard.
That's a different
They
I
haven't.
think Kathleen said they were looking at Oliver's Market. as-
No confirmation yet.
There's already one at Oliver's Market. That's where the closest Goodwill place is right now, is Oliver's Market.
For those of you who haven't followed the trail of the Goodwill trailer, it was initially on property now being developed by the Hunter Group, and they had to have it moved so that they could do their excavation work. And so we temporarily accommodated that for 2 months in the Burger parking lot. They then made arrangements on January the 6th to move it to church property adjacent to the Henry Trioni polo field. It was located at the far end of the asphalt parking area. Wild Oak residents complained about the site of the trailer in that location, and so Mr. Trioni acquiesced and caused it to have to be moved again, and we haven't heard anything further. If we
I might add a little further on that. The Hunter Group had said that once they get the grading done at the Meadows, that it could be replaced on the street in one of the commercial parts, which would be right next to the where our current office is. You will notice that there is a big hole in the ground there, which is a temporary drainage pond. So the earliest they would be able to move the trailer back onto that parcel would be after they do their final grading, get their water sewage system in place and fill in that what is now a holding pond for expected rainwater. So I would say they're a year away from being able to replace the trailer.
Thank you, Wally. We can go on then to item 9 on the agenda. Item 9A is the report by Valerie Hulsey on the ad hoc committee looking at Oakmont signage. You can just walk around with that wherever you need to point out things, Valerie.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the members of the signage committee, which Carol Cotton, Frank Batchelor, and myself, and with help from Donna Hopley and Star Power, I prepared the poster boards that you see around the room, showing what our facilities look like with the signage that has been put up through the years. We all know that some pool signs are required by law, and it's very specific as to the size of the sign, the letters, everything else about the sign. But it appears Oakmont may have gone a little overboard with the signs, not only at the pool, but on windows and doors of many of our facilities. For the board, each one of them had in their packet a list of the required signs. Just for your information, there are 7 signs required by the state of California for a swimming pool, and there are 6 signs required for the spa, the hot tub. The central pool has 37 signs. The east pool has 30 signs. The west pool has 29 signs, and if you go into the lovely woman's locker room, which most of us don't do, there's 12 more. So after the meeting, you could walk up front and see that's the west, that's the central, the east, and the far one is just miscellaneous signs around Oakmont. One of the most objectionable signs, to me anyway, and I didn't put it on the board because there was no more room on the central pool one, is the sign on the men's room and the ladies' room saying that children under 12 must be accompanied by an adult. If you happen to be at the pool with your grandchild, and your grandchild the opposite sex of what you are you really going to drag an 11-year-old little boy into the ladies' room? These are our grandchildren. What do you think they're going to do? In addition to the very unattractive overabundance of signs at the pool, there are 15 no animal signs in Oakmont that actually read, "No animals in Oakmont Village Association recreation facilities and common areas, except licensed tag, guide, and assistance dogs." If you take these signs literally, that means that residents could only walk their dogs on the sidewalks. Common areas is everything around our buildings. Also note the windows and the doors. I know it's hard to see from the audience, but the windows and the doors and the walls have paper signs. Might be at the library saying drop books here or whatever, but they're not attractive, just being stuck up on the windows. If a rule or a notice is permanent, an attractive permanent sign should be ordered and installed. Paper signs are tacky, they look cheap to the users of the facilities. In the CAC, we have several signs that say, "Card key needed to re-enter." These are all orange paper signs pasted on the doors. This is a permanent requirement, so these should all be signs, not tacky orange paper. None of the signs are appealing to a prospective buyer. Notice, most of our signs say no, and none of them say yes, come in and enjoy yourself. So the ad hoc committee, we thank you for allowing us to be an ad hoc committee, and we would like to request that these signs be reviewed by our association manager and our maintenance facilities manager, and we would be happy to meet with them and work with them and update them and work with them so we can update what needs to be done to make all of this more attractive. If we need one more sign at the central pool, we're going to need a larger gate to put it on. Are there any questions?
No, I can't
John,
wait to work with you.
could I request that this committee continue operation and working with our staff?
We'll be happy to.
Sort of tell them and point out the bad signs and give them ideas on good signs and so forth. Could you continue that?
Yes, we're more than willing to do that. Thank you.
All we need to do is not just ban them. But you know, in the interest of really being sure we're making progress, I would urge Valerie, that you and the other members of the committee, and Mark and Cassie, set a timetable, one location at a time, and keep the community focused on that location and what you've accomplished there, so that we can really see a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you. Carol Cotton was not bashful about being here. She and her husband had to be in Southern California for some surgery related that their daughter needed. And so Valerie took over, and we appreciate your doing it. Thank you. Next, I'd like Kathleen Conley to give us an interim report on the work of the nominating committee.
Thank you, Valerie. You're a tough act to follow. The nominating committee has been working very hard. We've met several times, and we've contacted and spoke with probably more than 40 people. To this end, we have identified 4 very, very good, capable persons who have volunteered to run for the OVA board. However, we need 5. So we are still in the process of talking to people, and we're pretty confident that we are definitely going to come up with the 5th person. 2 that we know of are seriously thinking about this. And I'd like to ask anybody here in the audience today if they can think of someone or if they themselves would like to become a member of the board, even though sometimes it's pretty trying. Please contact me and let me know. And we will be giving a formal presentation to the board at our next board meeting, listing the 5 new candidates and introducing them to you. So we look forward to that.
Thank you, Kathleen. I might also mention that the actual deadline for the committee to present their nominations is the 1st of February. That falls between our board meetings, but that's the deadline for the candidates to actually submit for publication in the February 15th issue of the Oakmont News, their photographs and their resumes. So in addition to Kathleen, who's here today and has chaired the committee, Tony Lakowitz is here and is a member of the committee. If you're reluctant to talk to Kathleen, Tony'd be glad to talk with you. Virginia Katz is here, and we heard from her earlier, and Virginia would be glad to talk with any of you. I don't see Teresa Woodrum in the audience, but if you run into Teresa, she would be glad to discuss it with you. And Steve LaRucia is also a member of the committee, and I didn't see whether Steve was here or not. He's not, but those are the people that have been working on this, and they'd be glad to hear from any of you who would be willing to participate. The next item on the agenda is the recommendation from the Architectural Committee for adoption of homeowner association guidelines regarding common area exclusive use. One of the changes brought about by readdressing Davis-Sterling Act provisions gives sub-associations, from our point of view here in Oakmont, or small homeowners associations, the ability to designate parts of their common area for exclusive use by residents within that association. And because our master association, the Oakmont Village Association, has architectural control over developments, it's been important for the OVA to provide guidelines for any one of our 35 sub-associations to utilize in pursuing this kind of common area exclusive use. 2 months ago, the preliminary of these guidelines was presented to the board. Directors have had a chance to look at them. It's back on our agenda today for action in terms of adopting those guidelines. And it's not a policy, so it's not something that we need to go through a publication cycle about, but the Architectural Committee does want the board's formal approval on these guidelines. So if I can have a motion to approve these guidelines. Moved by Herm Herman, seconded by Herm Hess. Any discussion by members of the board? Any comments by members of the audience? All in favor? Thank you for your work on this, Architectural Committee. The guidelines are now approved. The next item regards expenditure for bringing the heating and ventilating and air conditioning system at the East Rec Center equipment room and the control equipment associated with that mechanical device up to speed by replacing it. Do you have a comment on that, Cassie? Or is Mark here and want to comment on it?
Mark, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here, Mark. Mark Rogers, Facility Maintenance Manager. During the remodel of the East Rec Center, looked at having the HVAC equipment and associated ductwork replaced. Our subcontractor for the East Rec Center, Matrix Controls, gave us a low bid of just over $53,000 to replace 3 units that control all of the systems at the East Rec Center. Did put that in for the Finance Committee at last month's meeting, and that's what we have proposed for your approval in this document.
So the directors you have in front of you, the recommendation of the Finance Committee to spend up to $55,000 to install this new equipment at the East. There is asset replacement fund allocation for up to $68,800 for this work. Do you have any questions or comments about the proposal?
No, I'll wait till we go to have the discussion on the motion.
Do I have a motion to approve the replacement of the equipment? Moved by Herm Herman, seconded by Evelyn George. Discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. I see here on this quote, the bottom line there says excludes permits, fees, roofing, framing, and basically a bunch of other possible associated soft costs and any peripheral. Do we expect any peripheral work such as, you're putting on a pad? Is an existing pad there? You want to put a pad there? You want to modify an existing pad or anything like that?
It's a pick and replace of existing equipment. The largest piece of equipment there is a 15-ton unit. Was installed in 1988, had a lifespan of 15 years. So we are well beyond the expected life cycle of that unit. And the equipment that we remove will be an exact replacement, dimensions to go right back in. So there is no permit required for this. It's a simple replacement of existing equipment.
Okay, so they're not going to have to get into any other walls. All penetration and everything like that into walls and ducting are included in this project.
That's absolutely correct.
All right.
Other comments? Questions? All in favor? Thank you. I think you might want to describe for the community, not only the audience today, but in an article in the newspaper, the fact that when the actual replacement takes place, there's going to be some downtime at the East Rec Center. Do you want to tell us about that?
That's correct. In anticipation of this approval, I've worked with our events coordinator in our OVA office to clear the week of February 22nd to February 26th of any events at the East Rec Center. We anticipate taking that center offline for that week to do this mechanical upgrade as well as some other smaller work events that we have planned for that downtime.
So we either get overheated or freeze during these days?
No, what we're planning on doing is all the events that we would have typically scheduled during that week to move those to other facilities. So the only people involved in or working in that building would be involved with the mechanical work or French replacement. We have some other maintenance type issues, items that we would take care of at that time.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the comment.
If the rain ever starts, can this go on?
Absolutely, yeah. All this work is interior. So we have we have 3 units that are outside. They're fully wrapped to be done outside in time frame that weather's not going to affect us at all.
Question, will this affect the locker rooms or pulling?
No, it wouldn't. When we go ahead and we would pull the whole facility offline, we would close the locker rooms. We would have, because we won't have heating or cooling ventilation in there during this week time frame.
Thank you. The item 10C on the agenda is the long deferred fence repairs at the West Pool with wrought iron. Cassie, can you bring us up to date on that one, please?
Once upon a time, when I was first here, I was asked to get a proposal from some fence people for the bottom area of the fence, which is the area of the fence where you actually have to slide your card in. And so Mark went out and got 3 bids. Coggins Fence came in with the best, most comprehensive, and least expensive proposal. So we put that in the proposal in the working meeting this month for the board. And then further questions were raised as to the side part of the fence that's going up the hillside, because people were seen jumping over that side, and could that be replaced in addition to the other part of the fence? So Coggins was asked to come back, and we actually did a thorough walkthrough of the entire fence area, which is now has become the bid. And the reason we did that, it was not only is it going to look much better if we have an entire fence around the pool of the same construction, but also the top part we found was leaning, tilting over. If you poke in it, there's areas of it that are completely dry rotted through. And also the top area right by the walkway isn't connected to the walkway. And I was advised by the estimator from Coggins that that's a code violation these days. So you can actually, if you would want to try and get down the hillside through that little space, you could do it, and that would be a code violation for the association. So the bid that turned in from $7,649.66 bid grew to a $21,499.04 bid, which is to replace the entire fence. And then we also noticed the gate that's closest facing to the parking lot, the entire bottom of that gate has been kicked out at one time or another, and also areas around where you try and open the gates. So because of its unsightliness, we also added that to the bid. So that's also in that $21,499.04 price. Any questions?
Let's have a motion here, and then we'll get into discussion of it. Do I have a motion to replace the fences at the West Rec? Moved by John Felton, seconded by Fran Diaz. Thank you. Go ahead.
This includes putting the key equipment at the new, no?
No, we can always add that, but I was told or advised that you didn't want to have that access again. If you want to have it, it's not that much of a problem. That gate will be very card readable, but it was something about, Mark, what was it? You told me the reason that we didn't want.
The reason I bring this up is it was my understanding that that's exactly what we were going to do.
Oh, okay.
To that point, when the existing gate was made card accessible, it's ADA accessible also. So the issue with the gate that's still there, that's in this proposal to change, is when swim classes would meet, that gate was blocked open, and we weren't getting a read of who was coming through there without their key card numbers, people, if they're association members, or people from the general public. So we would propose to go ahead and replace the gate. We can add a card reader in the future, but we would like to go ahead and keep the gate that is currently active with a card reader the way it is. This gate would be basically an emergency exit, which would be to our benefit to have 2 exits away from the pool.
I don't quite understand. The problem is they're blocking this gate open now?
It was before I got here, and that gate was physically wired closed.
Well, we're putting a new gate in. What's to stop them from blocking it open now with the new gate?
Nothing would. But to go ahead and leave it in the condition that it is, with a future upgrade. And again, it's quite unsightly.
I'm not talking about, I realize we have to have a new gate, that's not a problem, but the reasoning behind not putting a card reader on there escapes me.
Okay, we didn't propose that. It is an upgrade. I went back and checked prices that when we had it done at the CAC of approximately $2,500.
Yes, it's not a big deal, Herm, if the board decides that that's what they want to do, then just add $2,500 on to that $21,000 price, and you're done.
Question? Cassie, I was flipping back and forth. I think that we probably need a summary revised contract that really gives us a clear picture, because I couldn't tell what was what, because we were going from wood to metal, and so forth, and so those prices were changed. And if we are indeed making the 2 card passes, then we would add that amount to that 2,100 plus amount?
The card reader wouldn't come from that company. It would come from a
that's
different
right,
company.
that's right.
So,
But at least for
sure,
just
we can condense
clarification,
that. Not a problem.
one revised contract that specifies exactly, I mean, this is for record keeping, because we've got so many pages that
Sure.
have been voided, and we're going, I would just think that might
Yes.
be an easier
Good
way.
idea.
Thank you.
Question. Chuck, can you tell us where we would stand going from a proposal that the Finance Committee approved of $7,700 to this larger sum?
The original project that was presented to the Finance Committee didn't include the extensive fencing that Cassie just talked about. However, and the Finance Committee did unanimously approve the project. However, the asset reserve has sufficient funds in it to replace the fence. So I'm personally not of the opinion that it should go back to the Finance Committee. I think it needs to move on from here.
I don't see the need to make another gate access, park gate accessible. There's one there already. And from that parking lot point where you get out of your car and we've eliminated the curb, it's the same distance to get where you're going, whether you go inside the fence or outside the fence. So what would it, we'd be spending that money, but I don't know what it would buy us.
Well, I'd like to second Herman's observations here. One of the reasons behind the extensive rebuilding of the small parking area with 12 spaces adjacent to the cabana was to bring that up to an ADA level and to provide, I think, a total of 8 handicap parking spaces. And the reason for locating that handicap parking that way was to make it easy for those people that were not physically as mobile as they would like to be to go in through the closer gate rather than going around on the asphalt pathway. And, you know, we can debate whether or not that's something that we want to spend money on, but there clearly was a history of design behind the gate access there, along with the improvement of the handicap parking adjacent to it.
And we paid money to grade that area so it would be level. So that played to the access to that gate as well.
A question, John. Are we being asked to approve the expenditure of the $9,000, or are we being asked to approve $21,000? And if so, do we not have to have 3 bids if we exceed a certain dollar sign?
No.
I think it's up to what the board wants to do, Herm. In other words, we have in front of us a recommendation that the Finance Committee saw to spend $7,700 for this project. The manager's telling us that continued investigation since the Finance Committee meeting 4 weeks ago has indicated that we could benefit by having Coggins do all of the fencing around the pool at the same time, including a new gate. And the amount that we're being asked to approve for that is $21,025. $499. And the question has come up as to whether or not to add an estimated $2,500 to make it a card access gate while replacing it. Jim?
Wait a minute, I got to ask a question, because I'm looking at the numbers whenever I went through it. You're talking close to $7,700 for the initial proposal, right? Then you got a $9,100, $9,107 for the next added proposal, and the $9,577 for the next added proposal. Then you had a $4,272 for a proposal for a gate.
No, you're seeing a wood alternative in there also, so you're adding that in. But as an aside to this, Mark, I thought there was an issue about having that gate really not being able to be handicapped accessible, even though the parking lot was redone and that sidewalk was repaired.
Well, we looked at having that, and this was, again, before Cassie or I got here, to go ahead and make the one closer to the building fully ADA accessible. Before I got here, as I got here, the secondary gate that's proposed to be replaced here was actually closed because of it being blocked open for accessibility. Again, we can make that a secondary entry. We can upgrade it to a card at any time.
Would it be ADA accessible?
It would be, it's universal accessible due to the parking lot. But we didn't propose that because the point that was made that there's already a key card on the gate that we've got. The gate that we propose would basically exit only to go ahead or for maintenance use, to be able to get in that way.
So let me ask you a question, because this has come up now. I'm not clear on if we got a $4,000 bid for the gate that they're proposing. Would that be the exact same gate that's an ADA accessible gate?
That's correct.
I don't want to put in a gate and then it not be ADA accessible.
This proposal from Coggins would match what we have at our other two pools.
Okay.
Same gate, same fence style, and make it the same. So all three of our pools would have the same.
I have a suggestion that I'd like the other directors to consider. I feel there's some level of confusion here about what we're trying to totally do and what the costs are. We will have a workshop in 2 weeks. We could make that a regular board meeting, as we have done on some items, so we don't lose another month in this process. Would you all be agreeable to withdrawing the motion, asking the staff to present us one proposal that tells the complete story, that reflects an accessible key-carded gate adjacent to the new handicap parking area and fencing around the entire pool that replaces the Grape State facilities that are there? I beg your pardon? Metal. Yes, this is proposed a wrought iron fencing system.
Are we talking about one or two gates, one or two gates with access?
We're talking about the existing gate remaining with access. We're talking about putting in a new gate with access.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. All right, agree.
So if you indicate we'll withdraw those motions, and we'll ask the staff to come back with a complete package for us for a special board meeting at our February workshop.
Who made the motion? John Felton, do you?
I already said yes.
Okay, you retracted such a report.
So John Felton withdraws his motion. Fran is.
John, I take water aerobics 4 days a week, and there's several other women in the room here that do also. And speaking for our handicapped members of our class, which it's so important for them, it is so difficult for some of them, especially if they're in a walker, to go to the far gate that's currently there. And as you mentioned, that's the reason they leveled out the parking lot, was so they could use that other gate. You know, we have 2 handicapped people, we have 6 handicapped spaces. and it doesn't do them a lot of good if they have to walk all the way over. I know you said, you know, it's the main gate is where they need to be anyway. No, it's not. I mean, a lot of them come right in and just get in the pool. They don't need to be on that side of the pool. They just need to be on the other side. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind, you know, when you have your meeting, that there really is a need for the handicapped people to have that other gate.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you.
The original plan was to have the electronic gate right there once the asphalt was brought up to level. And what's wrong with just relocating the electronic gate we have? We certainly don't need two gates to act at the pool.
John, perhaps the whole thing could go back to the finance committee so we could get a finance committee report including all those costs. Is that necessary or not?
Chuck indicated he didn't feel it was, but if the will of the board is to have it go back, then
Well, we have one this Thursday, so if you want to put it together and bring it to us yet again, we can add it to the agenda. Otherwise, it would be 2 months before you guys saw it.
can you get it back to them as a complete package for next Thursday?
I don't know. I'm going to have to.
Let's try and do that. So this item is deferred until our workshop. Kathy, will you help us remember that we want to have a special board meeting in conjunction with the workshop this first Tuesday in February? Item 10D is the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. We discovered over the past several months.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. 10C2, park course.
I beg your pardon.
No problem.
Thank you. Mark, do you want to come back here and tell us about the park course? My bifocals didn't focus in on the second line.
So as part of a review of all of our facilities, in conjunction with looking at fence repair at the West Rec, also had contractors give us bids for the rail at Park Course and at the East Rec Center. East Rec Center cost is quite low, Cassie approved that, and that will be in the same week as the HVAC repair at East Rec Center. This estimate is for rail and post replacement on Park Course Hill to replace what has fallen down and to repair certain rails and posts that are dry rotted.
And that's $2,700 for that project?
That is correct, and that is a complete cost to remove, replace, set the new posts in concrete and put it all back together, the length and style that it was originally.
So it's not really a wood fence, it's a railing?
Oh, no, it's exactly what's there. That size 6-inch pressure-treated posts and rails, we can still purchase directly and replace, put it back to what fell down, put it back and make it like it was the original.
Do I have a motion to approve a new wood railing along the park course for $2,700? Moved by Herm Hess, seconded by Evelyn George. Any discussion of that item? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you for getting that back to my attention, Jim. Now we have 12D, the OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute. The OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute item on the agenda is in connection with our discovering that we had an anomaly in our facility use policy. The lifelong learning programs were the only group activity that was permitting outside, non-guest people to participate in the lifelong learning program. And that level of non-guest, non-residents was set at 6%. Our manager, Cassie Turner, did the background research and discovered that that was simply an arbitrary figure to let non-Oakmonters come to lifelong learning classes. Put in there, according to Ted Tronson's information to her, just to accommodate what outsiders that maybe used to live here but weren't guests of a resident wanted to participate. And so the proposal for today is to simply eliminate that anomaly and let the lifelong learning activities, along with music at Oakmont and other activities, operate in accordance with our guest policy, which means up to 49% of the participants in a class, if they are a guest of a resident and attending the activity with the resident, can participate. Do I have a motion to revise the policy with appropriate publication to eliminate the 6% provision for lifelong learning non-resident participation?
I'll move.
Moved by Herm Herman, seconded by Herm Hess. Discussion?
John? So under the motion, are you proposing to change the policy today or to announce an intended change in an OVA policy? Because I think what you're doing is changing an OVA rule regarding the use of common facilities, and that's expressly listed in David Sterling as one of the items where the text has to go to the members of the community and be published for 30 days.
We're proposing to do that, but I was also going to follow the action on this if it passes, to propose a suspension of the rule until that policy change can be published.
That makes very good sense.
I didn't want to do the suspension prior to knowing what the will of the board was as far as the policy.
I would like to follow that with an apology for not having gotten up sooner, but your first action that you took under new business, any change in the architectural rules or guidelines is also listed as one of the things where you have to submit the proposed policy to the residents for 30 days. That's listed in David Sterling.
Thank you for the correction.
So that means that you do need to go back. I believe it means you need to go back and agree to publish that, not just adopt it today.
Mr. President, this is not an architectural guideline that has any force of a standard. It is not a guideline. It is not a architectural standard.
Does it have to do with the use of common area? Because the use of common area is listed.
It is not mandatory for use.
Okay.
It is not a standard. All it is a suggested guideline for sub-associations to use if they want to proceed with the process of granting this exclusive use. But the Architecture Committee has no legal authority over that. It's strictly a guideline for them to use if they want a template to go through the process that two of our sub-associations have gone through.
Good. I don't want to throw something in here that delays implementing something. I just want to make sure that we stay on track, because if we put something out there without having gone through the procedure, people will just ignore the rules. So, thank you.
Thank you for raising the question. We'll get back to that aspect after we finish this item. Thank you.
Now,
Jim?
My name is Jane Carpenter.
Just a moment, please. Thank you. Now go ahead.
Jane Carpenter, and I am representing the Oakmont Art Association. Several months ago, you debated about having outsiders come to art classes in Oakmont, and that was not passed by the board. Now, with the lifelong learning situation, I'm wondering if this is a reversal of that policy also for the Art Association.
There is no reversal as far as the policy is concerned. The situation you're dealing with Richard's desire to hold classes, was rejected not based on the policy, but rejected based on his past performance of not complying with the policy. If the Art Association wants to come forward with a support program, the way Lifelong Learning supports these activities, the board would be happy to consider it again.
In other words, we have to present a formal proposition to the board to allow outsiders to come to Oakmont Art Places.
No, you don't have to present that kind of proposal. What Richard was asking for that this board rejected was to have a class. And this board did not feel that his past actions justified our approval of his running a class, and therefore we rejected that application for a specific class. If the Art Association wants to come forward with a proposal to have a class, it follows the same rules that we're now talking about applying to for the lifelong learning.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Regarding this particular thing for Oakmont Lifelong Learning class and the guest policy, now let me make sure I'm understanding what we're doing here. We're not changing any of our policies. Our policy stays the same.
That's right.
What it is we had put a restriction on lifelong learning in the past of 6%. However, what we're proposing to do here today, if I'm not mistaken, is to simply allow them to have the same use of the facilities as any of our other clubs in accordance with our policy.
Exactly.
So we're not changing policy, therefore 30-day notice is not required. You're not changing policy within the organization.
Well,
I don't think it is.
Yeah, I truly don't know, Jim. I was advised that because 6% is not listed in the policy, but it's listed in the facilities use guidelines, that we had to publish it. I'd be glad not to have to publish something.
Well, your manager, she agrees.
Further comment? I guess to answer your question, Jim, we are maintaining the 51-49 ratio with the lifelong learning class. I attended their last meeting, and my concern was that there would be the possibility of shutting out residents with that ratio. They're not concerned about that because they feel very confident that they would, for every single guest, there would be a member in attendance supporting that guest in their attendance. So they're not concerned, and they really are not. They're not concerned that any of our residents would in any way be disenfranchised with their attendance or their ability to sign up and register for any of their classes.
Right.
So if they're not worried, we needn't worry, and we needn't worry about being overrun either.
No, my concern is, well, with the initial writing from the person, whoever this person is in Sonoma State, their initial assessment, okay, had me worried. Okay, because they made the word of that they have to make it public for the students to have access to it. We are not a public venue. We are a private venue. Our policies ensure that we are private. And we do that for a lot of taxes, ADA, whatever the case may be. All I'm saying is that we are not, in fact, changing that policy in any way, shape, or form. We're merely sitting there, for some reason in the past, we put this onerous restriction on lifelong learning when we shouldn't have. And now we're just bringing them up to state. So I see nothing wrong with telling everybody in Oakmont about this and publishing it. I mean, we want to do that, we want to communicate. But I don't think we should hold up our business and the way we're doing things in order to get approval. That is not required.
Basically, all we're doing is erasing a 6% footnote from one document.
Well, if members of the board are comfortable with handling this simply as an elimination and not publishing it, then we can go forward with that. I wanted to add one other thing, Jim. Dean Merkel, who is the Sonoma State officer that was at our workshop, Dean Merkel made it clear that even though the OSHA Lifelong Learning Program in Sonoma County is associated with the university, the directions of the OSHA board are to cooperate with the rules of the facilities that are being used. And so I see us right in line with that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, as in Rome, do Caesar said.
Bridget, you have a comment?
Bridget Molinari, I live in Stonebridge Road. I have a question. How do you want to enforce that? That the guest is there, that the Oakmont member is there with the guest? And how about the parking in Oakmont? It is a mess. And we have the concerts and the classes. It was not yesterday. Normally, it is absolutely overfilled. So, how many people you want to bring in? I mean, at 41%, if, 150, you have about 75 or 74% outsiders coming in with a member. So what about the parking, especially when you want to put a new building in there? So where you going to get the parking from? I know you told us 22 spaces. That is by far not enough. We have problems. I wish you would come sometimes when there's a concert on or when the classes are starting, which are popular, where people could park. You had, like last Monday, all the streets and they had enrollment. It was all crowded and full. You could not find a parking spot. And it does say here that Oakmont residents have priority in signing up. So how are you going to control it? I don't understand it. Because we haven't controlled so far anything, especially not the concert. Thank you.
William Bates, Stone Creek Circle. I think Jim Kaiser hit it on the head. We're dealing with procedure again. I brought this up over and over and over again. It's not policy. We have a guest policy. You designate procedure according to what is necessary for the designated organization. And in this case, it does not conflict with the Davis-Sterling Act. And you don't have to publish it, but you're going to have to publish it only on the basis of what are the procedures and rules concerned in this particular organization. And this applies to every organization independently. So I don't see in this particular case where you have any conflict of interest with policy, but you're going to have to come up with a procedure on how you control the guest and who is a guest. And I've said this over and over again. So I think you're on safe ground not having to publish it, but you're going to have to go in and re-examine the procedural process that involves the component pertaining to a guest and how you control it. The key is control. So anyway, that was my comment right there.
Thank you. Right behind you.
I was president of our homeowners association in Seattle many years ago, and you have my sympathies and also my deep admiration. So just a comment about our...
Identify yourself.
Yes, I'm sorry, Paul Heidenreich, Oak Vista Court. In our registration form for 2014, I just wanted to read a comment that we have. It says, if you're an Oakmont resident, it says, you check a box and say yes or no. And if you have a guest, and he also sees this form and fills it out. If no, I am the invited guest of an Oakmont resident with the Oakmont resident's name and phone number, who is also enrolled in the same course. So that's our goal. As I mentioned in the workshop, our goal is not to put butts in the seats. Our goal is to educate our Oakmont residents and their friends and be with them as they attend the class. Some of you here may know Ernie Rose. He's a charter member of the Oakmont Board, appointed Facilities Use Committee. He was on that committee. He sent me an email on December 15th making the following observation regarding the 6%, and I just wanted to underline it. He said, only one exception has apparently been made to that policy, singling out our lifelong learning guests to no more than 6%. And I wish to make it quite clear, and Ernie's a very soft-spoken guy, but he sent this to me with caps on this one particular section. He said, no such exception was ever discussed or recommended. And I guess all I can say is Oakmont Lifelong Learning is just asking to play on the same level playing field as all the other organizations here at Oakmont. Thank you.
We have a motion to... All in favor? Thank you. Just to be cautious, I'd like to have a next motion to suspend the rule for this first term under the possibility that research by our manager may indicate that there is some sort of policy requirement for publication. I think we've discussed it. I think there probably isn't, but I don't want to find ourselves in trouble. If you think we don't need it, then...
Well, no, but I think, Mr. President, simply by you directing the manager to verify the fact that our action is correct, I don't see a need for any other motion because it just kind of confuses.
A comment.
Keep us honest, please, Kathy.
A comment. I was pleased to see that Sonoma State is going to implement this change and have a control feature with it, whereby they will ask that the person in Oakmont who's sponsoring this individual be identified.
Thank you, Herman. Item 10E is the waiver of the late fee balance associated with an account. This is one of the requirements under Davis Sterling that we have to handle these in an open meeting, though it doesn't include the name of the individual or the address of the property that's involved. You've seen the background material in your packet. May I have a motion to waive? Moved by Jim, seconded by Herman. All in favor? Thank you. And finally, item 10F, referring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 accounts for action by the collection agency. Did I count right? 1, 2, 3, 4 accounts for action by the collection agency. Do I have a motion to refer these accounts to the collection? Moved by Evelyn George, seconded by Herm S. Discussion, Jim.
Discussion, Carol. I'm trying to find, make sure we got all the right. I apologize. I'm sitting here trying to make sure we got the right paperwork here. We've got 13,700, 13,703, 13,701, another 13,701 someplace. No, it shows 3, you know. You got 2 there, but you got 1 up in a previous one. What I'm saying is, we got data for 3, but it's asking us for 4.
Can you clarify that for us, Kathy?
There are 4 accounts for referral in the packet.
No, that's for waiver. That doesn't count.
I've got 4, Jim.
No, the first one is for attendance. Excuse me, you shouldn't say that.
Easy.
What's this number? Are you referring to collection? One you're waiving the collection, one you're going to go for. So I think you can go one, 2 things at the same thing.
Mr. Secretary, have you resolved this for us?
I will take a look here and see if I can sort it out. Who wrote that tonight?
Which we are voting. No, it's right here. That's correct. But we're getting, okay, my point is, we're getting ready to vote on collections, refer to collections. On the previous step, we just made a motion to waive collections for the same one. I stand corrected.
Pardon me? So we're cool with the 4 cases? Thank you. May I have a vote on this? All in favor? Thank you. We did get the motion in there, didn't we, Mr. Secretary? Thank you. The next item, 10G, is the item moved from the consent calendar for discussion regarding the application of First Things First for group recognition. Several board members have asked that we get some additional information from either Richard Duncan or Michael Harris, whose names are on the statement sheet. Richard, can you help us with a couple of things?
I'll do my best.
Your application says that members must be an Oakmont resident, but there are no bylaws or indication of how anyone as an interested resident becomes a member. Can you tell us about that regarding your club?
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Your application says that members, 100%, must be Oakmont residents, but it also indicates you have no bylaws. And so the question is, how does anyone become active or involved or a member of this club that you're proposing to have us authorize?
If they are an Oakmont resident, then all they have to do is to indicate that they wish to be a member of our group.
And so there's a regular meeting schedule and location for residents to participate?
It's not necessarily regular. We have not had the opportunity to date to have regular meetings because it's been difficult to arrange them.
Because of what?
Well, we don't have the authority to requisite rooms for our meetings.
Okay. So if this were approved, you would expect to have some sort of published meeting schedule and location
We would.
in the Oakmont News?
We would, yes, like any other club.
Your material also says, it didn't indicate this request for regular facilities. You simply said various facilities to hold executive sessions. Can you tell us what that is implying?
Well, we developed a charter with nominal positions for various members to be responsible for various aspects of community life. That was not formally accepted because we're not yet a formal organization, but that's what we would propose to do.
So you would be proposing to adopt some sort of bylaws or charter?
Pardon me? An organizational charter.
Okay. In light of your description of the activities that you propose the club would have, why did you consider forming a club rather than having the residents that are interested in this volunteering to be part of the committee structure for Oakmont that looks into our facilities requirements?
We haven't considered ourselves to be a club, but rather a group of common interest Oakmont residents.
My question is still the same. Why a group, an authorized group, as opposed to participating in the committee structure of the community?
There's nothing to prevent members from participating in the committee structure. We feel that First Things First represents a bridge between the various existing committees and the board of directors, and that our function, as expressed recently over the last few months, demonstrates a need for a group of this, with this kind of oversight.
And are you under the impression that as that bridge that you're talking about is concerned, that you would have some sort of special role to play? Because under our procedures, groups such as the Republican or the Democratic Club are permitted to publish their meeting schedule and their speakers, but they don't have any authority to publish any position papers or arguments in the Oakmont News or on the website.
Our expression of what we think is a priority for the community, it would not be a political one. It would simply be a financial one.
Well, I think that's one person's point of view.
Right.
I think other members of the board had some questions. Thank you for indulging mine. Herm, you have?
Well, I think finances are always political also. That's all I mean, everything we're doing has something to do with the politics of this association. And all I'm supporting is the fact that we do not allow in the Oakmont News what we call biased reporting or biased opinions in the various articles of the various clubs.
Understood.
Okay, as long as you understand that, yeah.
Your mission statement says, and I quote your words, your established structure would be responsible for the safety, legal, environment, finance, projects, changing recreational needs of residents, continuity of the board of directors, Oakmont's image, etc. End quote. You have assigned to your organization the duties which are the primary responsibilities of the elected board of directors. And this is not yours. I find this, to be over the top. And quite frankly, the wording may sound altruistic, but your actions would be subversive and destructive to this community, not building consensus, not building support. And on that basis, you don't have my support because you're undermining the motives of our organization.
So you would consider, first things first, criticism of your plans to build this building to be subversive?
I think the way you stated your goals and your objectives, and it's clearly expressed here, that you don't state what your headline is, first things first. We are addressing first things first. We have a long list of all the things that were on our to-do list. And fortunately, this board has moved it along. And we are moving it along. So I find it really odd that there would be so much dissension and so many objections to what we're doing or how we're doing it. And if you're basing it solely on our desire and our presentations of building an office building, as was pointed out earlier, we have made no decision. We have presented to the public a concept that if you want to talk about first things first, this comment or this objective that we're pursuing is 10 years old. We're way overdue. This is really a first things first.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, this is not supposed to be the debate portion of the meeting.
We need a motion as to whether or not to grant this request for group recognition. Is there a motion to grant the request as shown in your packet?
Well, I'll make a motion simply so that we can get a second to discuss it. Make a motion to approve for request.
Jim is making a motion for the purposes of getting it to discussion that we approve the recognition. Is there a second? Seconded by Herman. Okay, board discussion.
Now, discussions.
Pardon me? No, we're having discussion of the motion. Jim, go ahead, please.
No, I'm just wanting, I've let my fellow board members, some of them got some feelings about this, let get it out right now.
Yeah.
This is the time to do it, not back and forth with the audience.
Herm?
I see this as a mechanism for usurping the board's authority. And as such, I just don't think we should allow.
The only way they can usurp the board's authority is if we let them.
If you approve a charter which states in it that it is responsible for various acts of our community life, are you not authorizing that?
I don't have a copy of the same charter.
Page 23 in your packet, Herm.
Sorry, I didn't get those. I didn't get this.
I'm sorry, I didn't get page 23 in my packet for some reason. No, I mean, it just, yeah.
Well, what Evelyn George read, Herm, was that it says, quote, in the charter, I take it part of their, at least what they're communicating with us, is that first things first has an established structure. Team leaders are appointed with responsibility for various acts of community life, such as safety, legal, environment, finance, and the other things that Evelyn read.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a point
That
of
seems to be,
clarification.
that just seems to be a delegation of authority to this club that I think you might want to take a look at.
If I may, a point of clarification on that paragraph, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order, we're in the middle of discussion.
We're in the middle of the board discussion for a minute, Richard. We will get back to it and appreciate your clarification. Jim, do you have any comments about this?
No, originally I thought, in line with what Herm was saying, that as far as, hey, they can be recognized like any other group with the provisos, I believe, that you brought out, not having any biased political or slant towards any input or communication in the Oakmont News. However, upon further reflection, listening to some of my fellow board members, I have to agree that the way things are written and stuff like that, and you have to go by the written word, that we are kind of contracting out our job if we do this. And actually, you're not authorized to do that.
Other board member discussion before we get some clarification from Richard?
Mr. Chairman?
Please, go ahead.
Well, I feel it very rewarding to know that a number of individuals are so qualified to take on this extra job. However, this is the right time to let us know about those individuals because we need candidates for our coming election. What has bothered me, I think, in the name of getting first things first, is that over the past 4 years, some of the things that have been completed in just recently, those things were needed to be done at that time. I feel that the previous manager, as well as a lack of action on the part of the board, might have been this. But these same people have been participating in what we have been trying to do during this administration. And we really, what we need is the support of everyone rather than duplication. The idea behind this group, which as I note is not a club, is that you are duplicating both what the board is supposed to do and what each of our committees are supposed to do. So, as I say, because you say these people are qualified to take over, I think it's important that they join the various committees who have the responsibility for each of these tasks that you feel are not being accomplished.
Richard, you want to clarify this paragraph for us, please?
Excuse me. Where it says the team leaders are appointed with responsibility for various aspects of community life, I'd like to say that they are responsible to first things first, in their particular team role rather than responsible as the board.
But your wording is not clear in that regard.
Admittedly, if the board would please take note of the fact that the intention there is for where it says responsibility for various aspects of community life, that's within the group of first things first. It's not intended to mean that we take responsibility for what you're responsible for.
Call the question.
May I ask a question first? Excuse me.
Absolutely.
It seems to me that we're hearing that this group would intend to have a formal charter and would intend to ask for meeting room space and have a regular meeting schedule. Would it be appropriate to defer this consideration of their application until they have this more formal statement of their purpose and meeting schedule and clarity of how members can participate as opposed to executive sessions? Or do you just want to act on it the way we have it today? Call for the question. The motion was to approve the application of First Things First as stated in the documents that we have in front of us. All in favor? Opposed? Motion fails 4-3. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business.
That was approved. That was approved back when we approved the consent calendar.
That was approved about an hour ago.
So you sat there all that time for no reason.
We're sorry that we weren't clear about that. Our procedure is sometimes complicated.
Shame on you. Shame on you all.
And we haven't had too many glasses of wine.
It's America. No CBC. Record.
Thank you. The unfinished business item 11A regards the West Recreation Center development, and we'll turn to our manager for a report on that.
The report is that Weir Anderson was at the building last Wednesday, and they gave us an outline. They gave the board an outline. It's on page 85. And what they did is they had their own questions about what they wanted to spec out in the building for additional, for instance, new fixtures or finishes, new lighting, flooring, removing existing flooring, install new waterproof membrane, what is the existing flooring, new stucco, identify areas of work, flashing details that are required, the bridge to the wall, the balcony railing attachments. I was there, they pretty much measured everything and looked at everything, and this is in regards to the seismic repairs that they plan on speccing, and also for the men and women's locker rooms that we're going to gut and remodel. And I asked them when they thought that they would have that information back to us, and they said probably in a couple of weeks, which means that we would probably see something concrete from them the first week in February.
Can you work with them to be sure that they're aware that we have a workshop scheduled for that first Tuesday in February?
Okay,
And
yes.
this would be an opportunity to discuss it and decide how we want to go ahead with it?
Yes. Okay.
Because I think that, you know, is one of the keys to the long list of important safety and facility quality items that the board has been trying to get to the point that we could authorize and move ahead with it.
have a question, Bill.
Yes, Art?
18 months ago, we had 5 companies, 5 architectural and engineering companies quote on that project in the West. I just wondered if we had the courtesy of including those 5 companies who went to the trouble of presenting their program to us when they did.
I'm not sure that I know the answer to your question, Art. My impression is that Weir Anderson did the seismic work, and so they're pulling that piece together, and after we have their recommendation, then we would be able to go to those 5 companies to ask them to participate in the bidding process. This is just a design phase. Do you have any other answer, Cassie?
No, that's a good answer. And one of the reasons where Anderson was chosen to do the design work is because they had architects that both do structural design, seismic repairs, and they also have architects that can do the remodel that's needed. So again, I'm trying to consolidate and not have so many consultants in the mix. It's just too confusing.
Any other questions on the manager's West Recreation Center report or comment? Thank you. We'll go then. Again, go to item 11B, the Meadow at Oakmont, the First Amendment to the Annexation and Capital Contribution Agreement, a proposed revision. In the December 29th report that the board sent to the community, we not only indicated that our meetings with the Hunter Group led to a easing of the time schedule associated with our present agreement for presenting plans to them in connection with a construction alternative. We also told the community that if Oakmont felt it was best at any point in time, that they would be willing to consider negotiating a return to the same kind of pay-as-you-go program for impact fees that is now in effect at the Orchard. Based on the kinds of study that we've done and the input that we've had from the community, particularly raising questions about whether or not a construction alternative in the Orchard arrangement versus a construction alternative in the Meadow environment had the same benefits for OVA. The point being, when we had a construction alternative available to us in the Orchard development, it was a roughly $200,000 project for a maintenance building in a $2 million projected revenue stream. And it was available in the time frame when we could have them build us a building that we badly needed and could start using more than a year ahead of when we would be able to have impact fees from the sale of houses in the Orchard in order to do the job ourselves. We don't have that same kind of time frame benefit in connection with what's being considered for the Meadow. We also have a revenue stream of $540,000 as our current estimate versus a potential building project under the construction alternative in excess of $1 million. And so I think the question has been legitimately raised, would the association benefit more by going back to a pay-as-you-go program, putting ourselves in the position, number one, of having a gradually increasing impact fee calculation as houses are sold, and at the same time not being tied to a single contractor for the construction of a building, i.e. being able to put it out for multiple bids. And I think at our January 10th meeting, it was clear that our architect's advice was to point out that he thought this was a contractor that we could work with, and the provisions of the agreement gave us some financial benefit in terms of their not getting any benefit of overhead or management services. But at the same time, Mitch Connor acknowledged that in this kind of environment where the economy is improving, that bidding is also a potential value. And so I propose for today's agenda a motion that's in your packet that I would like to make and ask for a second. And the motion is to authorize a board executive committee, that is a committee made up of board members, to initiate negotiations with Hunter Group to revise the April 24th, 2013 First Amendment to Annexation Capital Contribution Agreement, to eliminate provision of a construction alternative and replace it with provisions for impact fees to be paid as meadow development houses are sold, with the fee amount to reflect consumer price index calculations approved October 1st, 2002. Is there a second? Oh, yeah. Herman, second. Discussion.
I've given this considerable amount of thought. At first, I thought it was really to our advantage to get the money up front, and the calculation I did looked like we'd come out ahead by about $80,000 plus or minus. However, under further thought, I've changed my mind. I think it's going to be could be very difficult to control the costs on this project. After we reach the $540,000 line, which I'll just use arbitrarily at this point, we have no control over what happens after that. There's no negotiation of how much profit they build into it on that point. We'd have a difficult time tracking the quality of the work. The company, and this may be an unfair assessment, but they're primarily home builders. This is a commercial project. It's a matter of auditing to make sure that they're really following the rules. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but they're businessmen, and that they try to figure out a way to minimize their losses. I think in the long run, we'd be better off to go out to go ahead with the project, is to go out to bid and handle it in a straightforward manner.
Yes. I agree too that it would give us the opportunity to get 3 bids. And the thought occurred to me, however, that it might behoove us to leave the door open a bit and to let the Hunter Group also be a part of that bidding system. They may come out ahead and we would be the beneficiaries. In other words, we might revert back if we have an option of letting them use that instead or in lieu of the money, but at least we would have other opinions, objective opinions, as to the value of that building and the construction costs related to it.
Well, obviously, I'm in favor of anything that gives us an opportunity to look at other alternatives, and the existing Hunter Group contract did present us with some time pressures that we have now been relieved of to some extent. The wording of this motion, John, I'm just a little confused perhaps. You're authorizing a board committee to initiate negotiations to revise the agreement. The revision that you were suggesting would be strictly to get rid of the existing agreement and go to impact fees that would be paid upon sale of the individual units. There's no leeway in here. This committee would be authorized only to negotiate that aspect of it only. Am I correct?
I don't believe that that's the intent of the, I know it's not the intent of the motion, and I hope the word didn't indicate that. That's the primary purpose that I wanted to communicate. Normally, contract negotiations would be discussed in executive session, and I just felt that this whole subject has been cantankerous enough that we ought to try and talk about it in open session. And my whole term was that if we approve this, that the board executive committee would address these points. But I think there are some other things that they could bring up that might prove advantageous to us.
Well, this is my only point. I didn't want this to completely limit the scope of this committee that would be working, that's all.
And I'm open to an amendment.
Mr. President, can I suggest an amendment? Rather than say that it's to eliminate the provision, just say it's to include the elimination of the provision so that it allows for other matters to also be included.
Thank you.
You understand?
Thank you for the suggestion. You made the motion? Well, I made the motion and you seconded it. I would accept the change, and you accept the second. Is there other discussion among the directors? Jim?
Yes, so once again, we're going to agreement to, what's the rewording on this?
So in the third sentence, it would say to include the elimination of the provision of the contract.
So it's adding the words.
You want to hear that again, Jim?
No, I'm with you. I guess my question was, and it goes a little bit to Herm, why are we eliminating anything? I mean, if you were to keep your, open to all things, why not sit there and say, agreement to add a provision for impact fees to be also considered? You know, something like that. I'm just saying, why take anything off the table is what I'm trying to get. And that gives you a lot of leeway when the negotiating team does. I mean, because we may go back and say, hey, we do want construction. We want to go with construction. Right? Or we say, well, no, it's advantageous for us to go for the impact fee. Well, instead, the executive committee and the board have to bounce back and forth.
Well, I think that, excuse me, Jim, that clearly is a choice, I think. The point I'm making is, I was suggesting that the construction alternative, in my judgment, has reached the point of not being beneficial to the community. And therefore, I would choose to move away from it. I would choose to, therefore, eliminate any of the question about how much idle time we have to make a decision. I just think it does away with what was approved in February of last year by introducing the construction alternative. Because the construction alternative that was introduced simply introduced an option to paying money up front. And so this gets away from the money up front, gets away from a construction alternative, and puts us in the position of being able, if we go ahead with a building, to do it on a competitive bid basis without these other considerations.
So your suggested change of wording in this would be to eliminate the provision,
I'm not suggesting any elimination, any changes. I'm talking to Herm.
Talking about you.
Yeah, go ahead, Herm.
He accepted a modification, I accepted a modification. Could you clear up exactly how that modification should be worded?
Yeah. It would be to amend the motion to read that it would reopen negotiation to include the elimination of the provision of construction alternative, rather than solely for the elimination of construction alternative.
So in the third line of your motion, after the word "to," insert the words "include the," and after the word eliminate, include of the.
Well, you got to change eliminate to elimination. So to include the elimination of the provision.
My question is, what is our objective? I think we're marching sideways here. What is our objective? The objective, I would think, is to look at those aspects of the contract that are mostly in favor of us, of things we'd like to do. Now, so I would think that an upfront payment would certainly be acceptable, or dribble in. We'd have to look, I call it that, we'd have to take a look at those too, but we're taking the other one off the table. So we're essentially adding one and taking one away, with the objective of coming up with something that is the best advantage for us.
Call for the question. Or you have some.
Well, I was just going to say, the elimination of any bargaining chip is not, I don't think, is in our best interest. I'll be voting.
The board ready for the question? The final reading of the amended motion. Move to authorize a board executive committee to initiate negotiations with Hunter Group to revise the April 24th, 2013 First Amendment to the Annexation Capital Contribution Agreement to include the elimination of the provision of a construction alternative and to replace it with provisions for impact fees to be paid as meadow development houses are sold, with the fee amount to reflect consumer price index calculations approved October 1, 2002. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? The motion passes 4-3. Next item is item 11C, the proposed central facilities construction project. Herm Hess, you had a motion that you wanted to bring up on that.
Yeah, I wish to make a motion to establish a temporary hold until April 15, 2014 on activity in connection with the proposed central construction project in order to allow a board executive team to explore the recent Berger Foundation expression of interest in discussing possible sale of the vacant property at 6594 Stonebridge Road, otherwise known as the Old Beauty Salon.
Is there a second? I'll second it to get it up for discussion.
I sent an email to each one of you indicating I had some motions I would like to make today. The motion that Herm made is a portion of mine, one of mine. I am not convinced personally that there are not flaws with the existing proposal for the CVC. I am not convinced that there's not flaws with other possible alternatives. In fact, I think there probably are. I think we need to do much more thorough investigation of these other alternatives. In regard to your motion, I think we need to add to that motion that we get a second opinion as to the viability of that piece of property, the beauty part of property, as a potential alternative. I don't think we know yet in regard to cost, in regard to a lot of things, as to we know whether that is a viable. I would sort of hope it is personally, but then that we don't know that it's a viable alternative. We need to. My suggestion would be that we need to hire another outside architect engineering firm to give us a second opinion as to the viability of that piece of property, and then along with that have this executive committee negotiating with the Berger Foundation as to the possible cost of purchase and/or lease purchase of that property. It seems that this whole thing needs to sort of go together before we can come to any
I don't disagree with that. I do think what it says, though, is that we will establish a temporary hold until we can get to the point of understanding what's available.
I certainly support your observation that we need to know more about the development capability of that parcel. But the initial question is it for sale? You know, is it something that's worth spending additional dollars on to develop? And so that's why the focus of the first step. It doesn't preclude doing, in fact, it's essential. You know, if they were willing to sell it in terms of the space that we need ground-wise, any agreement with them would have to have so many contingencies on it relative to our ability, first, to get a design, secondly, to get city approval. So price is only a small part of that negotiation.
I agree.
The time frame for concluding a sale and the contingencies are.
Yeah.
So I think the motion simply addresses investigating the first step, simply because in the community meeting, we were able to tell the community that the Berger interest, contrary to their previous statement, would like to talk with us about it.
If I may, add a few words that really kind of leave the door open, and add as a viable alternative.
Well, that doesn't
Mr.
follow
Chairman.
with this motion.
You know, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I don't know. You're sitting here about a temporary hold. I mean, we've already got a plan of action here. We've got an executive committee looking at property, right? So we're not going to do anything. We went to Hunter Group asking for a delay in the time. I mean, for us to sit there and put a self-imposed hold on us when our schedule and our proposed plan already does it. I mean, we're going step by step. I mean, I don't see this being a worthwhile endeavor at this point in time. I mean, the hold is if we get to a certain point and all of a sudden somebody wants to do something, we vote on it. No, don't want to do that. Okay, let's move on.
Jim?
Yeah.
I think what this really says is that rather than continue to promote the CBC building thing, let's take a look at these other areas and then make a decision after we've found out what's available out there and what is best for Oakmont.
Well, yes, but the chairman of our board has already got an executive committee looking at those alternatives already. I mean, we are in the process of doing that, but we're not doing it at the sake of anything else. He's looking at CBC. He says he's looking at the property, the old beauty salon, or whatever the case may be. So we are looking at I mean, we're not putting one forsaking the other at this point. That's one of the reasons why we got the time deadline removed from Hunter.
We're getting caught up in the paralysis of analysis. Think about that. We keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and reviewing it and reviewing it. It'd be my preference to say the date hit 15th, whatever day it is, and say on that day, we'll set our goal of finishing all our investigations, make a decision, and get on with it at that point.
I think the other point that comes to my mind about this is that up until this point, we as directors have received input from other committees, from our committees, as well as the community on this project. I think this motion focuses on the board directors themselves getting in a hands-on way, looking into each one of these factors and giving ourselves a limited time frame in which to do it, and then make up our minds on how we're going to proceed. So that's what's being.
Okay, yeah. As I say, I have two other motions I want to, but we have to take care of one at a time, so.
Call the question.
Call for the question. Herb Hess's motion was move to establish a temporary hold until April 15th, 2014, on activity in connection with the proposed central construction project in order to allow a board executive team to explore the recent Berger Foundation expression of interest in discussing possible sale of the vacant property at 6594 Stonebridge Road. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 5-2. You had another motion.
I would like to I'd like to remind the board that we have one exceedingly critical need that we are not adequately addressing as far as the time is concerned. That critical need happens to do with the replacement of the switchgear, electrical switchgear at the central project that services the entire central complex. My motion is as follows. I move that we immediately separate out from any proposed construction project for a new office building the issue of the vital replacement of the electrical switchgear for the central complex, and task our staff to immediately start those processes necessary for the replacement of this switchgear and the construction of housing for this switchgear, the central pool equipment, and ancillary uses.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This is not on our agenda, it cannot be voted on, cannot be acted on business.
I'm willing to accept discussion of it, but I'll leave that up to the members of the...
I'm sorry.
Proposed central facilities construction. If this isn't part of that, I don't know what is.
There was the 11C motion I've got in my hand. And now, I don't see your motion in my hand, and I don't see the other one that you're talking about.
Can you give us your motions in writing so that I can bring them up at our workshop while you're traveling? I think, excuse me.
Yeah, just a point on this issue of it not being on the agenda. 2/3 of the board can vote to accept an item that wasn't previously on the agenda, but it would take that in order to proceed with purposes. Otherwise, you put it off to the workshop.
Noel was offering the observation that his understanding of the rules say that if 2/3 of the board want to hear your motion today, then we can add it to the agenda.
I believe that has to do, though, on either an emergency situation or something that wasn't brought up.
Not an emergency, just something that you were not aware of before the meeting.
That's right, something that was not brought up,
Yeah.
put on the agenda.
I am not concerned how this is handled. I am seriously concerned that we let this switchgear situation slide until we make a decision on this central business complex. I don't think it can wait that long. We may not choose to build a project at Central. We may choose to do something else. We may choose not to build anything. These are all our alternatives that we have, but that is something we can't wait on. That's not an alternative. That's a vital something that we needs to be done. If you want to do it at the your next meeting, I don't care, but it has to get done.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. I agree. It has to get done, okay? However, I think by us doing it, keeping within the CBC framework, if we do it that way, the way we've got it, it's going to be more cost effective for us instead of doing out as a line item.
I disagree completely that the cost would be enough to make any difference. What we're talking about is one common wall of maybe 20 or 30 feet long. That's the only thing common between those two projects.
I'd like to comment, please. This falls within my area of expertise professionally. What I would like to do is offer to the board, take it or leave it, that we've set this aside for the moment. I would like to have time, and with your blessing, to sit down with Mark and possibly another engineer and take a look and see exactly what our situation is. Is it that serious? Is it not that serious? Where could we put it? What are the options? And come back with some information before we decide to go full speed ahead. I think we're putting, not that it's not important, but I think we need to keep things in perspective.
The only other thing I would offer her for not doing it today is, number one, we have an application pending with PG&E, and we've paid their $2,000 deposit fee for design of the location for the transformer.
The transformer,
associated.
correct.
Secondly, we have a committee, we have a contract in force for roughly $5,000 with Ray Slaughter, electrical engineer, for the design of the location where the electric switchgear goes and for the interconnection of the cabling between a new transformer location and a new switchgear location and the existing cabling from the wooden facility into this building and the other building. And I just think arbitrarily separating it from any other discussion may be counterproductive in terms of his engineering work. But I'll be glad to put it on the agenda for our workshop.
Yeah, I don't see why it should be counterproductive, but then I'm not an engineer, so.
We have a motion but did anybody second?
It was not seconded.
It was not seconded, so you don't
Question of
really.
whether or not it was appropriate.
You're right. Well, no, you go back and say, is there a second to the motion?
I'm confused.
Well, we have to take a vote. How many people on the board will allow this to be an agenda item to be voted?
Thank you for the clarification.
That's the first thing we got to do.
The point's been raised that Herb wants to make a motion today, and the issue cannot be brought up because, unless 2/3 of the board agree that we want to talk about it today, because it wasn't listed as an agenda item. Are there, how many people want to talk about it today?
I think it has to be an emergency. Once you put out an agenda, you cannot do that unless it's an emergency and 2/3 of the board. It doesn't seem to be such an emergency because...
Thank you, Bridget. I think the point is moot. There are only 3 people who want to talk about it today. It takes 2/3 to talk about it, and so we move on. Future board meeting agenda item recommendations. I've added the electric switchgear proposal that Herm has, and I'll take his other one as well. Are there other items that the board wants to have on the future agenda that we should list today? Hearing none, are there taskmaster items on the list, Mr. Secretary?
I only have 3 with good help. That is for Cassie to prepare a single bid from Coggins regarding the West Rec Center fence and in time for the workshop, and to schedule a separate special meeting at that same time. And also for Cassie to try to have Anderson, the contractor, pull together his recommendations regarding the seismic matters in the West Rec Center for the workshop.
Thank you. Any other matters to come before the committee? We will have an executive session for contract matters and for one personnel issue.
Did you ever actually vote on 11C? Discuss an action item, or you voted for it?
Yes, we did. I believe Kathy, what was the vote on item 11C?
It was majority, and it was moved by Hess and seconded by Taylor. The motion reads, move to establish a temporary hold until April 15, 2014 on activity in connection with the proposed central construction project in order to allow a board executive team to explore the recent Berger Foundation expression of interest in discussing possible sale of the vacant property at 6594 Stonebridge Road.
And it passed 4-3. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.